call me Crazy Joe? Well, now they can call me Batman.
What up? Welcome back once again to the Necro Zoo. I am Bones. And in this one, let's go ahead and add one more figure to my McFarlane DC Multiverse collection. Now, today we will take a look at Batman from Batman v Superman. Now, this is actually a long time coming. I have been asking for this figure ever since they made that first Justice League wave. And although I did have to wait about 2 years, was it well worth the wait? We shall see. Now, he does look pretty formidable in the packaging, but let's go ahead and take a closer look at him. But first, he does come with your standard black DC Multiverse stand. Now, of course, these are not really needed, but sometimes they do come in useful. He also comes with his data file card. On the front, you have an image from the film there. Pretty sad to see that this whole film series never reached its full potential, but for what we do have of the Snyderverse, we have enough films and content to last us for years. On the back, you do have some information. Now, I always thought that Affleck did an awesome job portraying Batman. Now, the Bruce Wayne is a little bit up in the air, but he did an awesome job portraying Batman. Definitely one of my favorite portrayals of the Dark Knight in film. I actually pretty much put him up above Bale, and that actually tells you something about how much I really enjoyed the way the character was portrayed in what we did get from the Snyderverse. Now, I was always a big fan of that original suit. I remember seeing the promos a long time ago before Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. And although Mattel originally had the license when the film came out, I was never a big fan of their live action figures. Now, eventually I did come across this sort of black suited version of Batman, and this is what got me into at least buying most of the Batman from Mattel, but it was really rare that I picked up any other of the live action figures. But there was just always something about this figure that I really liked, no matter if you look at it now, it has very archaic articulation, pretty much prehistoric, but he is still a pretty sweet looking figure. So I was always interested to see McFarlane's take on this suit. Of course, we did get the tactical version 3 times, and now finally we get the original Bat suit from Batman v Superman. Although I like more of a darker scheme, even though it isn't, exactly from the films. But I think all in all, this figure is a great figure. Now, surprisingly, he does come with tons of accessories. He comes with 2 big old batarangs. And if you ever thought if McFarlane still thinks that these are pretty much sold to a lot of kids, this could give you a big clue, because if you go back and look at Mattel's kid version of the figures, they always gave like supersized versions of the accessories. So these are no different. They're pretty huge. You also get a big giant grapnel gun. Now, it is the grapnel gun from the film, but of course it is molded in just solid plastic with no detail. But we will remedy that. And it is also very large, but I can actually bring out the old Mattel one, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Imagine if this is so huge that it would not fit with this figure. Imagine it being with a tiny 6-inch Mattel figure. Although it was the more standard kid version line, but they still went out of their way to make the accessories ginormous. But always appreciated. We'll hold on to that. And although I do have the fists on him, he did come with 2 alternate gripping hands that will come in useful. And For people that say that McFarlane figures do not come with anything, this one pretty much came fully loaded with accessories. So that is really appreciated. Although we will have to play around with the accessories. But let's go ahead and take a closer look at the actual figure. Now, I'm not going to do too much articulation because basically it's the same articulation we have seen before. But what I do want to do is actually focus on some really nice points of articulation and taking a look at the suit. Now, first impressions, this is an awesome rendition of the Batsuit from the films. You can see all the texture work in there, the grain. It is just awesome. Now, looking at it from afar, you do get the feeling that this is a sort of leaner Batman. While we do know that Affleck in the film was basically a tank, like like he looked sick, he looked like a really brutal Batman. This one gives me a little bit more of a lean down version, but it might be because how the head sits really high on the neck. But I still feel like they could have added a little bit of bulkiness. But if you're just a casual consumer and you want a Batman v Superman version of Batman, this really sticks out on the shelf, and a lot of people are going to be wanting this figure and purchasing him in the toy aisles. And that is if you can even find them. Now, all the details are there that we've seen, that big symbol, the utility belt, just awesome. I could see some details that would need painting, and that is fine because really the essence of this version of Batman is there. Taking a look at the head sculpt, as I said, it does kind of sit a little bit high on the neck, which gives him a little bit more of a leaner look, but we will remedy that with a shorter neck peg. But I love the head sculpt. You can actually see the version of Affleck in there, especially in some positions. Now, you could add some wash to the face, a darker wash, but for all intents and purposes, this head sculpt actually hits all the points that you want for an Affleck head. Awesome, awesome head sculpt from McFarlane. Now he can look down pretty well, looks up super high, which is great, especially for figure photography. You got right to left, and of course you could tilt his head for some character. So all in all, pretty great head sculpt. Now I said I'll run through the articulation. You got that waist articulation. You got the same shoulder and socket pushing joint that gives you a lot of movement. Bicep swivel, double jointed elbows. Passable. Moving down, you got all that beautiful texture going into the gauntlets. Of course, at the wrist, you do have that McFarlane articulation. So all in all, your standard McFarlane range of motion. Not too much in thigh swivel, but when you do adjust this figure like I did my custom, you'll actually get more range. But for now, it is pretty tight. Double jointed knees. Ankle articulation is great. All that beautiful sculpt and detail on this figure is truly magnificent. Take a look at him from the bottom. You got some tread and you also have some identifying marks. Moving up the back, they didn't skip on the back sculpt work. It is still there. While you are missing a little bit of a sort of a wash that they gave him on the front, this backside looks a little bit more plain, but you're not really going to see the back with this cape, and you could always give it a dark little gray wash. You got a peg hole here. I'm not sure what that's for. Pretty sweet. You got the cape. Now, I'm not against cloth capes, but I just like for them to be really tight and sleek with the figure. And this one actually works very well. Looks really great. You got it cut out at the bottom for those like Batman flares. So pretty awesome cape. Now, the one thing I did want to point out with the articulation is look at this guy's forward crunch. I mean, that is awesome. It rocks all the way, almost leaning forward. So that is some great advancement in the articulation for the waist from McFarlane. So all in all, as I said before, if you just see this figure and you're not, some sort of film aficionado or, you know, really that big into all the details, this is a perfect Affleck Batman that will go on your shelf or your desk and look really cool. Now, of course, you can pop out the hands and get the grapnel gun in there. You have the alternate gripping hands, and you can get him in different poses so he'll look really good. There's no problem there at all. Now, one thing I do want to talk about is the height. Now, I'll bring out my Cavill Superman that I have. Now, of course, this is my custom one, so you'll notice he has all the details painted in, that really shimmery blue. Did some shadowing to the head sculpt, so for me, this is a pretty good rendition of Cavill Superman. But you can see that he is slightly taller than this Batman, and I would really prefer them to be a lot closer in height. Now, that actually brings me into my custom version. Now, what I really like about my custom version is that I wanted this version of Batman to be in a more darker scheme because, of course, that is how I prefer him. Now, there's nothing wrong with the tint of gray blue that they have on the figure, but I just really wanted a darker schemed version. Now, first thing I did, of course, was shorten the neck peg, which really makes the head sculpt widen up a little bit and looks a little bit more of that thickness that Affleck brought to the character. So that looks a lot better, and you really don't lose that much articulation. You could even mod it to give them more range, but it's actually fine just the way it is, just with a slightly shorter neck peg. Now, once I finished that, I did know I would have to lift his height because, of course, I shortened the neck peg. So, first thing I did was actually do the thigh lift. Of course, if you want to know how to do this, go and look at my Martian Manhunter classic version video, and I show you how to do the thigh lift. And this really raises him up a lot more than people think. But I was actually not done. I actually switched out his ankle joints and used the ones from the Endless Winter Batman. I actually had some left over from when I made my Bane with a coat. So this actually worked itself out perfectly. Now, the ankles, the thigh lift really made this a taller figure. And he's actually a smidgen taller than the Cavill Superman, which I'm actually fine with. You could really tell when you put them in front of each other, like I did first the standard release and the Superman, and then I switched it up with my custom and the Superman. You could tell the height difference. But as I said before, my main thing was I wanted the darker suited version of Batman. So first I hit him with some Mondo Satin Black, and that was because that paint really sticks to the McFarlane figures. Once I was done with that, I actually went back over it with a jet black matte. Now that really toned down the shininess and gave him that more like realistic look to the costume, which I thought looked really awesome. So, you know me, I had to do some work also on the accessories. So, I took the grapnel gun and actually painted it up with some gunmetal, a little bit of silver, some sort of brass, and it actually looks pretty good with him. I mean, it's not perfect, but I'm actually happy with it. It looks good enough, and I'm going to be having some fun doing some figure photography with this one. So I bought like a set of figures loose, and he actually just put some weapons in there. And this was one of them. And I didn't know what it was. And then when I looked up Batman v Superman grenade launcher, I found out that it is actually the one that Batman uses. And this definitely fits this figure. Looks perfect. I know I'm going to have tons of fun doing some figure photography with these figures now because I have what I always wanted, which was the original suit of Batman from Batman v Superman. But anyways, guys, really awesome figure. This is Probably gonna be in my top 10 of the year. Awesome Batman figure. Get one now. I bought 4 of these because I knew I was gonna want to do some custom work, but they are hitting stores now. Don't sleep on it. But anyways, you guys keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.